Robert E. Siegel, the systems leader, cross pressures that make or break today's companies. Every year, hundreds of thousands of visitors flock to the Mercedes-Benz Museum in Germany to admire classic cars and celebrate one of the most admired brands in the world. With top engineering talent, loyal customers, and global prestige, the company seems like a symbol of lasting success. But behind the scenes, its leaders face hard choices. They're under pressure to protect short-term profits while building electric vehicles, improving software, and adjusting to a changing industry. The company's edge in the past doesn't guarantee it'll stay ahead. This kind of pressure hits leaders at every level. It comes from all sides: bosses, investors, employees, and external forces, and the demands often conflict. Many leaders sense the tension but lack a clear way to manage it. In this blink, you'll explore a practical framework for handling 5 common types of pressure. Balancing execution with innovation. Showing strength while staying empathetic. Staying focused internally while remaining aware of the outside world. Operating globally while honoring local realities. And pushing for results while holding on to a deeper purpose. You'll also hear stories from experienced leaders across industries who faced these tensions, and what you can take from their approach. Let's get started. Why leadership is harder than it used to be. Leading used to feel challenging. Now it can feel almost impossible. If you're responsible for anything meaningful in a company, you're likely facing more stress, uncertainty, and conflicting expectations than ever before. What makes it so tough is not just the sheer amount of pressure, it's how much of it seems to pull in opposite directions. Start with the basics: short-term results versus long-term progress. You might know exactly what the business needs for the future, but you still have to hit your numbers this quarter. Ignore the future and your business fades. Ignore the present and you could lose your job before change has a chance to work. And that's just one example. Modern leaders don't just manage. They're expected to be strategists, diplomats, tech experts, role models, and public voices all at once. Your team might want you to show vulnerability and empathy, while your investors might want aggressive action and tough decisions. Customers want innovation, but not if it means service gets worse. And all of this happens in a world where norms shift constantly and new disruptions arrive without warning. The forces behind this pressure aren't slowing down. Technology alone is moving faster than most people can adapt to it. Leaders are expected to handle AI, cybersecurity, and digital transformation on top of everything else. But that's just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Economic swings, political instability, global tensions, social issues, labor expectations, climate threats, and a media landscape where one mistake can go viral in minutes. With pressure this intense, it's no surprise that some leaders crack. What's more surprising is how many start indulging in attention-seeking, blame-shifting, or even outright stunts. Whether it's posturing on social issues, chasing flashy trends, or treating employees and customers with disdain, these behaviors might feel good in the moment, but they do real damage to reputations, companies, and trust. So what's the alternative? Some leaders choose a different path. They learn to hold competing goals in balance and make progress even when tensions are high. These are systems leaders. Systems leaders take on the challenge of meeting short-term demands while laying the groundwork for lasting change. They combine execution with innovation and show strength alongside empathy. They stay focused while listening across departments and across the organization's ecosystem. They pay attention to context, learn constantly, build trust, and make decisions under pressure. They aren't trying to be superheroes. They practice consistently, improve their judgment, and help their teams perform well in complex, unpredictable situations. In the sections that follow, we'll look at how experienced leaders manage 5 common pressures and how you can learn to do the same. How to deliver now and build what comes next. In 2018 and 2019, 2 Boeing 737 MAX planes crashed, killing 346 people. The disasters led to years of regulatory scrutiny, lawsuits, and a huge loss of trust in what had once been one of the world's most respected engineering companies. While technical and regulatory failures were involved, a deeper cause stood out. Leadership had shifted its priorities. Long-term safety and engineering excellence were pushed aside in favor of deadlines, cost-cutting, and investor pressure. This is what happens when execution takes priority and innovation, or safety, quality, and long-term thinking, gets sidelined. And Boeing's story isn't unique. Across industries, leaders face a familiar pressure: deliver results now or risk falling behind later. The problem is, you rarely get to do both at full speed. Balancing execution and innovation is one of the hardest acts in leadership. You have to run the core business efficiently while also taking smart risks to build what's next. Many companies try to solve this by separating the two. Operations people focus on delivering results. Innovation teams chase new ideas. But this divide often leads to tribalism. Innovators see operators as rigid and outdated. Operators see innovators as flaky and impractical. The real challenge is getting these groups to respect each other and finding leaders who can think and act across both worlds. That's where systems leaders come in. They don't delegate the tension, they step into it. Pedro Earp, former Chief Disruptive Growth Officer at AB InBev, worked to build an innovation culture inside one of the world's biggest beer companies. He knew the company was great at growing large brands like Budweiser, but needed to get better at creating new ideas and scaling them. His role wasn't to shield innovation from the rest of the company. It was to spread it until innovation became everyone's responsibility. Systems leaders also take ownership of financial trade-offs. They engage directly with capital decisions, balancing short and long-term bets under pressure from markets, boards, and investors. That means understanding budgets, risks, and timelines, not just delegating those decisions to the finance team. Balancing priorities isn't about getting it right every time. But leaders who build the habit of thinking on multiple time horizons and act on that thinking are far better positioned to guide their teams through uncertainty without sacrificing what matters next. How to lead with both toughness and care. When Revathi Advaithi took over as CEO of Flex, she faced a pressure many leaders know well: how to drive performance while still showing care for her people. Her company had to embrace advanced technologies to stay competitive, which put many jobs at risk. But instead of treating reskilling as someone else's problem, she made it a core responsibility, training tens of thousands of employees to adapt and thrive. The goal wasn't to avoid hard changes. It was to carry them out without leaving people behind. Strong leadership and empathy don't have to be opposites. Systems leaders reject that either-or mindset. They set high standards and expect results. But they also treat people as long-term assets. That means seeing retraining not as a cost, but as an investment that boosts morale, protects valuable institutional knowledge, and helps the bottom line. In many cases, it's actually cheaper to reskill a current employee than to hire someone new. Some leaders do this by funding large-scale programs. Amazon, for instance, committed over $1 billion to retrain workers for better roles. Others build cultures that make learning a constant expectation. And some do both. What they share is a belief that preparing people for change is part of the job, not a luxury to add when things are going well. This mindset also applies when designing how organizations work. Questions about in-person versus remote teams, internal roles versus outsourced services, and how to keep younger workers engaged are all part of the equation. Systems leaders think ahead. They shape their organizations to support both flexibility and loyalty. Consistency matters too. Leaders like Kathy Mazzarella at Graybar succeed because they treat people with dignity while still making tough calls. They listen to feedback, lead by example, and show that it's possible to be ambitious and human at the same time. In moments of crisis, this approach becomes even more important. It's easy to cut training or delay tough conversations, but leaders who hold on to both accountability and care help their teams stay ready for whatever comes next. How to stay grounded and outward-looking. Early in his Intel career, the author was part of a group focused on emerging tech and startup investments, but his boss often sent him to work with internal product teams. These assignments didn't help his team's metrics, but they built trust and exposed him to the realities of the core business. By earning credibility inside, his external insights gained more traction. He began to see that the goal wasn't to choose one focus, but to strengthen both. That's the mindset systems leaders bring to this tension. They don't pick between internal and external demands. They engage with both. Shifting attention is needed, spotting pressure points and adjusting how they lead. Instead of thinking in silos, they think in systems. One tool that helps is the influence map. It's a visual layout of your ecosystem: partners, suppliers, customers, regulators, even competitors. It shows who matters most, how power flows, and where relationships are shifting. Some partners may become adversaries. Some small players might turn out to have an oversized impact. Systems leaders revisit and redraw these maps regularly. They use them to decide where to invest time, build trust, or push for change. Naomi Allen, CEO of Brightline, leads this way. She regularly steps back to assess how she's spending her time, externally, on partnerships and growth, or internally, on team performance and morale. During one phase, she focused on retaining key employees. In another, she prioritized customer feedback and board engagement to reshape strategy. Instead of chasing a perfect balance, she stays responsive. Systems leaders understand that influence is fluid. They don't treat their ecosystem as fixed, and they don't assume yesterday's priorities still hold. They read the environment and respond in kind, reallocating resources, reframing their message, and sometimes stepping directly into conflict when trust needs rebuilding. System leaders act when the internal culture is off. They act when external threats emerge. And they recognize that the best solutions often live in the space between the two. By holding both worlds in view, they make better decisions, ones that move their organizations forward without losing sight of what holds them together. How to think globally and act with nuance. When John Donahoe became CEO of Nike in 2020, he stepped into a perfect storm: disrupted supply chains, fierce new competitors, and a drop in market share. One of his toughest challenges was managing Nike's complex relationship with China. While some activists pushed for the company to pull out in protest of human rights issues, Donahoe stood firm. China wasn't just a supplier, it was one of Nike's biggest and fastest-growing customer bases. Rather than taking sides, he made clear that Nike was committed to staying engaged, operating in line with its values while recognizing China's importance to its business. This kind of geographic cross-pressure is everywhere now. Global markets offer huge upside, but they also bring volatility and cultural complexity. The challenge has only grown with what the author calls Globalization 2.0, a phase not only about outsourcing and supply chains, but also global demand, shared innovation, and rapid change across borders. The world's economies are more connected than ever, but also more complicated. Systems leaders operate within this messiness. They think globally while staying alert to local realities. François-Henri Pinault, head of luxury group Kering, put it clearly. We don't want to be different from one country to another, but we need to be relevant in each country. That's why Gucci, one of Kering's brands, delivers the same premium product worldwide, but adapts its marketing to fit each local culture. That mindset doesn't happen by accident. Systems leaders build it by hiring local talent, distributing authority, and staying open to multiple perspectives. Pinault spends much of his time on people, finding leaders who can adapt to local cultures without diluting brand identity. They know which decisions must stay centralized, like sustainability goals, and which ones are better handled on the ground. They also weigh moral tensions. Should you exit a market over a troubling law or try to influence change from within? There's no single rule, but ignoring the impact on employees, customers, and partners across regions is no longer an option. In a world where geopolitics and business are deeply entwined, systems leaders stay flexible, informed, and self-aware, guiding across borders when no answer is perfect. How to stay steady when values are tested. What kind of leader do people respect when the stakes are high and the answers aren't obvious? In today's climate, shouting the loudest often gets the most attention. But instead of leading by grandstanding, system leaders lead with clarity of purpose, moral steadiness, and a deep sense of responsibility. They know that ambition alone isn't enough. You need the judgment to know when to push and when to hold back, especially when public pressure is fierce and values are in tension. Jim Fish at Waste Management showed this kind of restraint. While others called for a COVID vaccine mandate, Fish encouraged vaccination but left the decision to employees. It wasn't a neutral act. It upset people at the top, but his choice reflected a longer view of leadership. He prioritized the trust he'd built across the company and saw his job as guiding, not imposing. That quiet consistency built credibility where it mattered. Systems leaders apply this mindset to much more than one decision. They define their purpose clearly, act in line with it, and don't lose sight of it in stressful moments. When Cloudflare decided to block extremist websites, its leaders didn't present themselves as some kind of heroes. They explained their reasoning plainly, acknowledged the risks, and took responsibility for the power they held. That seriousness, not ego or ideology, guided their choice. Statesmanship means doing what's right for the long-term health of the organization, even when there's no easy win. It's about weighing complex trade-offs, respecting different employee beliefs while standing up for shared values, maintaining neutrality while recognizing harm, pushing innovation without losing cultural integrity. Leaders who do this well rarely attract headlines, but they do shape the future more than those who chase attention. The key is to set principles in advance. That way, when the pressure hits, there's already a framework for how to act, and instead of reacting emotionally or trying to please everyone, you focus on what matters, building trust, acting with consistency, and staying anchored in purpose, so that the organization is stronger, more thoughtful, and more durable in the years to come. To The Systems Leader by Robert E. Siegel, you've learned about 5 common pressures that often pull in opposing directions. Modern leaders must deliver short-term results while driving long-term innovation. They're expected to act with authority and strength, but also show empathy and care. They juggle internal dynamics while staying tuned to external shifts. They operate across borders, balancing global strategy with local needs. And they pursue bold goals, all while remaining grounded in purpose and responsibility. Systems leaders don't eliminate these tensions, they learn to manage them. By staying flexible, consistent, and self-aware, they help their organizations perform and adapt in a world full of competing demands.